the Royal Flying Doctor Service. I also mentioned the story of a young mother who went into labour, and if it wasn't for the RFDS, that child, Indy, would not be with us today. So I just want to say what a wonderful launch event. The best event we've ever had at Parliament House was what the RFDS delivered today, and to thank you all for the service that you give to Australians, to regional Australians. May you prosper and support Australians for many, many decades to come. Thank you.
Call to the honourable member for Hasluck.
Thank you, Speaker. What's the definition of courage? It's the ability to do something that frightens you. I see it in Gianni Williams in my electorate of Hasluck, who brought our community together for the first Pride in Swan Festival. Giannini stands up proudly for equality and inclusion, even while facing vile attacks from extremists emboldened by those opposite. I see it at the Guildford Sterling Arms, where the staff acted without hesitation when a neo-Nazi White Australia group infiltrated their venue. Owners Jesse Casserly and Dave Elder showed the courage and the moral fortitude when they stood up to the very neo-Nazis that those opposite failed to condemn when they march in our streets. And, Speaker, what is it to have the courage of conviction? It's having the strength of character to uphold—
Member resume his seat. The manager on a point of order. So just withdraw the remark and move on.
I withdraw. And, Speaker, what is it to have the courage of conviction? It's having the strength of character to uphold what is right without being afraid of the consequences and external pressures. And I see no courage in the Leader of the Opposition. She has all of the facts, the science right in front of her, yet she is cowering to political extremism to save her own political skin. To the Opposition Leader, come to Hasluck, raise a glass with us at the Sterling Arms. Thank those workers who stared at hate in the face and said—
In accordance with Standing Order 43, the time for member statements has concluded. Members can take their seats as quickly and as quietly as possible. We shall move to questions without notice. Are there any questions? And I give the call to the Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
My question is to the Prime Minister. Labor has been in government for almost 4 years. Inflation is rising, businesses are closing, and Labor's policies mean there will be no Christmas interest rate relief. This Prime Minister promised no one would be left behind, but because of Labor's failures, today's Food Bank report reveals that 50% of renting households and nearly 70% of single-parent households are going hungry. Prime Minister, will you take responsibility for the fact that under your watch, millions of Australians cannot afford food?
Call to the Prime Minister.
Thanks very much, Mr Speaker. Well, our economy is continuing to grow. Inflation is half of what we inherited. Real wages have increased. Interest rates have started to fall. But we understand that the work of good government and the work of addressing cost of living pressures is never done, which is why we continue to act on cost of living measures. We understand that people are under pressure, but they would have been under more pressure had they not got an income tax cut that was opposed by those opposite, except for, of course, at the higher end. They would have been under more pressure if inflation still had a 6 in front of it, which is what we inherited. They would have been under more pressure if the more than 1 million jobs that have been created on our watch had not have occurred. Women in particular would have been under more pressure if the gender pay gap wasn't the lowest it has ever been. Workers in aged care would have been under more pressure had they not got the substantial pay increases that were funded by this government. Workers in childcare would have been under more pressure had they not got the pay increases that childcare workers have now got in order to be sustained. Workers would have been under more pressure had the 4 increases in the minimum wage not been advocated by this government and the Fair Work Commission had not listened to this government. The easy task is to identify a problem. The difficult task is delivering a solution. My government is committed to delivering solutions right across the board, whether it be addressing people on the minimum wage, whether it be the increases in payments that we've made, the energy bill relief, the cheaper medicines, the cheaper childcare, the tripling of the bulk billing incentive for Medicare, the delivery of urgent care clinics. I tell you what, the over 650,000 Australians who benefited from free TAFE understand that that doesn't just skill them up for a better job. It doesn't just improve the national economy by providing employers with the skilled workforce that they need. It is also cost of living relief. Cost of living relief that was dismissed by the Leader of the Opposition, who said that people don't value it if they don't pay for it. Well, we make no apologies for that fact. We make no apologies for the fact that we've delivered when it comes to increased support for rent assistance, that we're delivering increases in support for social housing as well.
Call to the honourable member for Bonner.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. How is the Albanese Labor government delivering on its commitments to ease cost of living, get wages up and strengthen Medicare? Are there any risks threatening these plans?
The call to the Prime Minister.
Well, I thank the member for Bonner for her question and for her strong advocacy of that local community. As someone who I campaigned with in the lead-up to May the 3rd, I understood how connected she was with that local community and how passionate the member for Bonner was about making a difference to people's lives, making a difference by easing the cost of living pressures, making a difference by getting wages up, making a difference by strengthening Medicare, and of course there'll be an urgent care clinic in the member for Bonner's electorate very soon. At the election, we promised to keep acting on those things, and they're certainly our focus right now. 111,385 cheaper home batteries installed since July 1. And the last time I was in the member for Bonner's electorate, we stood in a backyard there and looked at the real difference that it was making. The solar panels on the roof, the battery, making sure that that energy is stored, reducing bills permanently for that family. The $10,000 bonuses delivered for construction apprentices. So along with free TAFE, delivering them with a bonus and an incentive to go into construction, backing up the original plan that we had, and delivering for energy apprentices as well, delivering for the new economy. We, of course, have cut student debt by 20%, promised and delivered, flowing through, as the Minister for Education has said. In coming days and weeks, there'll be that little button that they'll press on their phones, getting the information, that detail through to all of those students, to the benefit on average of $5,500. We, of course, have opened 5% deposits for every first home buyer as well. And last Saturday, the largest investment into bulk billing in Medicare history. We want 90% of GP visits to be bulk billed by 2030 and make sure that more GP clinics bulk bill every patient. As of Friday, the number of GP practices committed to bulk billing was 1,600. It's now Wednesday and already over 1,000 GP clinics have been added to that list. That's the sort of positive action that's been delivered by our Labor government. Those opposite are defined by what they're against. They're against Medicare, they're against cost of living help, now they're against reliable energy and action on climate change as well. And of course, we know what they're really against. They're against each other.
Call to the Honourable the Deputy Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question goes to the Prime Minister. Given the RBA's decision to keep rates on hold, millions of Australian mortgage holders will start wondering if interest rates are as low as they'll ever go under this government. The Treasurer's spending spree is at the heart of the problem. Government spending is running 4 times faster than the economy. Given that repeatedly the Treasurer refuses to take responsibility for this, Prime Minister, will you take responsibility?
Call to the Treasurer.
Sit down, pal.
The Treasurer will pause. Treasurer will pause. Order. Jim, just resume your seat for a moment. No, we're not having this. The Leader of the House.
Mr Speaker, there's lots of things in standing orders that are described as disorderly. Continuing to interject when you're out of your seat, as the member was, is described as highly disorderly, and I just draw your attention to behaviour that he was warned about yesterday.
Yeah, I'm not particularly enamoured with people making a question, and you know the primacy of the question that I believe is important for every member to be heard in silence, to then have another go when you're sitting down. I don't think that's fair, and if we go down that path all the time, it's going to lead to a pretty bad question time. So I'm going to warn the member. That means you're now on a warning because of that behaviour. So, and just for everyone, we want to do things respectfully and follow the rules and follow the proper processes for everyone. So no more of that behaviour. I thank the Leader of the House for raising it, but I'm not particularly enamoured when people don't follow the rules. So we'll hear from the Treasurer.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I'm pleased that the member for Fairfax has taken a brief break from undermining his own leader to ask me a question about the budget and about yesterday's decision by the Reserve Bank to keep interest rates on hold. Partly because it gives me a welcome opportunity to point out an egregious lie that was being pushed around the gallery this morning on morning media by the Leader of the Opposition. And the Leader of the Opposition said, completely untruthfully, dishonestly, that the Reserve Bank yesterday called out the government's spending when it came to the decision that they took independently at the board level. That never happened, Mr Speaker. In fact, government spending wasn't mentioned by the Reserve Bank Governor yesterday. It wasn't mentioned in the board statement, and the only mention in the detailed forecasts which were released, which were downgrade their assumptions about government spending going forward, Mr Speaker. And so from time to time, reluctantly, it's on us to point out the egregious lies being told by those opposite about our economy. Now, if they were honest, Mr Speaker, they would say that the Reserve Bank Governor drew no link whatsoever between the government's budget position and the decision that they took yesterday, Mr Speaker. But the Governor has said on earlier occasions, has made this point about the government's budget. We have got relatively low debt compared to the other countries, relatively low debt to GDP ratios, our deficits as well. We've had a couple of surpluses, and the most recent deficit, in fact, is quite small as well. That's what the Reserve Bank Governor actually said about the government's fiscal position, Mr Speaker. And while we're on the topic, Mr Speaker, of being honest about the fiscal position, if the Shadow Treasurer was honest about the budget position, he would acknowledge and admit and confess that they ran 9 budget deficits and we have run 2 budget surpluses. He would point out that he had average real spending growth at 4.1%. We've got it at 1.7%. He would acknowledge that there were no savings in their final budget when inflation was absolutely galloping. We found $100 billion of savings because we see that as part of responsible economic management. If he was honest, he would point out that debt is $188 billion lower because of our efforts over recent years than it was under the trajectory that those opposite left us with. And our efforts to get the Liberal debt down means that Australians are saving tens of billions of dollars in debt interest. And so I welcome the question from the Shadow Treasurer. I hope he asks me a number of questions about this, because the contrast between our responsible economic management and the mess that they left us couldn't be clearer.
Point of order, the Leader of the Opposition.
In his answer, the Treasurer accused the opposition of a point
resume your seat. It's not an order. I'll give you the call, but you've got to state what the standing order is. You just can't say you didn't like the answer. Order. The Leader of the House.
Mr Speaker, there's a whole lot of precedent in characterising an individual as a liar, but which was not done. In referring to a comment,
You can resume your seat, and then you will get the call. You will don't. Okay, you'll be able to make that point when the leader finishes.
Didn't at the time. Keep up.
Just everyone, you will get the call. Order. Just take a breath. I'm going to hear from the Leader of the House.
To use the term with respect to a comment is different. Secondly, the practice makes clear that the point of order is meant to be taken immediately, not at a later moment.
All right, the manager is entitled to order. Members on my right, the manager is entitled to take his point of order now. Yeah.
No. You are hopeless. You are hopeless and a liar. Lying to the Australian people. If lying is in order, then lying is in order. This is a liar. A liar. That's what we're debating here, and I'm happy to debate it.
Just the manager, resume your seat for a moment. No, just hang on, everyone. The Leader of the House raised his point of order. I was giving you the courtesy to raise your point of order. I want you to do it again and state what your point of order is, rather than just starting to. Yeah. Yeah. Well, hang on. Just. I'm going to ask you to restrain and state your point of order.
Parliamentary terms, it's well trodden. The Treasurer, on several occasions in his answer, as the Leader said, used the word lie. It is well trodden in this House. And he accused her directly of being a liar. And when that was raised, the Leader of the House knows it's unparliamentary language and it should be withdrawn.
Okay. We'll get through this. The Leader of the House.
On a separate point of order, the comments that were just made in the earlier moment when I stood up, by the Manager of Opposition Business are seriously disorderly under every definition, including his own. He knows it. He only did it for the purpose of disrupting the House. He did it for the deliberate purpose of being disorderly.
Okay, this is how we're going to handle this, because I don't want anyone called liar. I don't want anyone called accused of lying, right? The practice is crystal clear on that. The Treasurer didn't accuse an individual. He called the party. So, order. I didn't hear him accuse an individual of being a liar. Okay. But I'm going to get you to both withdraw, because what you did was completely unacceptable. And I'm going to get. I thank the manager. I'm going to get the Treasurer to withdraw.
Thank you, Speaker.
And I'm going to remind everyone that word is fraught with danger. Please don't use it. Use other words. And now we're going to move on. Give the call to the honourable member for Bennelong.
My question is to the Minister for Climate Change and Energy. How is the Albanese Labor government focused on delivering the benefits of renewable energy to Australian families? Why is focusing on the needs of Australians so important? And what are the risks to affordable and reliable energy?
Give the call to the Minister for Climate Change and Energy.
Well, thank you very much, Mr Speaker. I thank the member for Bennelong for his question. And the Albanese government's focused on delivering for the Australian people not only through the 111,385 batteries that have been installed since the 1st of July, but also the Solar Sharer program announced yesterday to give Australians a chance to get free power in the middle of the day. And given how assiduous the member for Bennelong is and what a fantastic local member he is, I'm sure he saw the letter in the Sydney Morning Herald this morning from John from Bennelong, who wrote, "Congratulations to the federal government for introducing 3 hours of free electricity. My household currently gets free power for 2 hours from our provider. we charge our car, we do our washing and charge our household batteries during this time. As a result, our power bills have been slashed. And John from Bennelong gets it, Jerome from Bennelong gets it too, and members on this side of the House get it, but those members opposite don't get it because, of course, there are around 14 to 15% of this country works shift work. People are at home at odd hours who might have the opportunity to use their power in the middle of the day and do so for free. Or the 36% of Australians who work from home, who have the support of this side of the House in that choice, who will be able to shift their power use to the middle of the day and get it for free. In addition to the big reductions in their energy bills for those 111,000 Australian households who now have a cheaper home battery, this is what delivery looks like. And we're able to do these things because we're not distracted, we're not divided, and we're not fighting ourselves, Mr Speaker. That's why we're able to deliver these things. And the member asked me why focusing on the needs of Australians is so important. It's important because it's all about delivery, something the other side wouldn't understand. Remember, our friend, the Leader of the National Party, was asked how he would respond to Barnaby Joyce, the member for New England, leaving the National Party, and he said, well, we'll be focused on ourselves. You know, the reality is we'll focus on ourselves. Well, I've got to say, credit where it's due. Promise made, promise kept, Mr Speaker. Promise made, promise kept. Focus on themselves, just true to their word. I mean, it's going so we've had a Liberal Party say of the National Party, and I quote, they are terrorists, and the first rule of being a parasite is not to kill your host. It's all going swimmingly over there. All going swimmingly over there, Mr Speaker, which resulted in the Shadow Minister for Climate Change on 7:30 report last night couldn't rule out the Liberal Party, the once great Liberal Party, supporting the construction of coal-fired power stations in Australia. I mean, the party of Harold Holt is now the party of Andrew Bolt, Mr Speaker. That's how the National Party's calling the shots over there, and it's all a reminder, as the great Bob Hawke told Australia, if you can't govern yourselves, you can't govern the country. And that was true then and it's true now. And what we're seeing on those opposite is a party, a group of parties who clearly cannot govern themselves and certainly cannot govern the country.
Okay, before I call the member for Bradfield, we've got a few people I need to acknowledge and I'll break them up in a couple of groups today. The first I'd like to acknowledge is Ms Svetlana Tizekana-Noska, the head of the United Transitional Cabinet of Belarus. We have a group from the Canberra Fellowships Program visiting from Indonesia, Thailand, Malaysia, Vietnam and the Philippines. Dr Tanzil Rahman, the member of the Legislative Assembly, the Honourable Paul Scully, Minister for Planning, and also the Executive Committee members of the Isolated Children's Parents Association of Australia, which works to improve the educational opportunities and outcomes of geographically located children. Welcome to you all. Give the call to the member for Bradfield.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Treasurer. Foodbank Australia's 2025 Hunger Report reveals that 1 in 3 Australian households have experienced food insecurity in the last 12 months. This means that 3.5 million Australian families could be going without food tonight. Foodbank has a proposal that would make it cheaper for food producers to donate excess food to those in need, reduce food waste and save taxpayers' dollars. Will the Treasurer commit to legislating a national food donation tax incentive which would achieve these aims?
Call to the Treasurer.
Thank you, Speaker. I thank the honourable member for her question. I think this is the first opportunity that I've had to congratulate her on her comprehensive victory in Bradfield.
Order.
And I thank her for her question. I thank her for her question about a very serious issue and a seriously terrific organisation, which is Foodbank. I am aware of the report, the analysis and the ideas in the Foodbank report that has been put out today. I take the opportunity to thank them for the tremendous work that they do in communities right around Australia, helping people who are doing it tough. I'm aware of that specific idea about the tax incentive. I think from memory also there's a Senate committee that looked into a similar idea. Obviously we take those kind of suggestions seriously. We also know that a lot of businesses are already doing the right thing, absent the implementation of a tax incentive like that. And I thank those businesses who are making those donations to Foodbank and other like organisations as well for the work that they do, Mr Speaker. I want to shout out as well the Assistant Minister for Charities. We've done already some substantial reforms to support charitable giving, including a new DGR category to support community-focused giving. And we also know that there is more than one way to help these wonderful organisations doing the right thing by people in our local communities. It is a source of some pride to me, and I think to Minister Rishworth, who did the work on this in the last term of the parliament, that this government is providing an additional $20 million each year to help food and emergency relief organisations. We took that decision in an earlier budget. Some of the organisations in the member for Bradfield's electorate are benefiting from that: the Salvos, Vinnies and Lifeline, I think, just to name three. And it means that our total investment in these services has gone up to $460 million over 5 years. Now, the opposition leader also asked about Food Bank, I think in her first question to the Prime Minister. But what was missing from the opposition's leader's question was that when those opposite were last in government, they cut $20 million a year from these programs. They actually cut these programs for Food Bank. And they also opposed our tax cuts,
the Leader of the Opposition.
Efforts to boost wages. They opposed our cost of living help. And so the point that I'm making in considering the idea put forward by Food Bank is we have restored the funding that those opposite cut. That's because we know the important work that Food Bank and others do, and we've also found other ways to help people who are under pressure: energy bill relief, permanent increase to working age payments, rent assistance, tax cuts, boosting real wages and the like. We're a Labor government. We're always looking for ways to help people with the cost of living, especially the most vulnerable. Food Bank is the same. Sounds like the member for Bradfield shares our interests too.
Give the call to the member for Sturt.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Treasurer. What is the Albanese Labor government doing to make the most of the global transformation to cleaner, cheaper and more reliable energy? How does this compare to other approaches?
Call to the Treasurer.
Thanks, Mr Speaker, and thanks to the member for Sturt for the question, but also for the helpful role that the member is playing already in our climate and economic policies as a relatively new member of this place. The member for Sturt understands, and we understand, that the transition to cleaner and cheaper, more reliable energy is a golden economic opportunity for our country, for our economy, for our people as well. And our economic agenda is all about making the most of this big economic transformation to net zero. We know that what's making the electricity network less reliable is the ageing coal-fired part of the network. And as that becomes less reliable, as more and more of those generators come out of the system, the onus is on any responsible government to replace that with cleaner and cheaper, more reliable energy. And that's why when we released our 2035 targets, Mr Speaker, we put out the Treasury modelling that supported the decisions that we have been taking to get that cleaner and cheaper, more reliable energy into the system, because we know that when you provide that certainty and you provide that clarity, then investors can invest in the energy that we desperately need in our economy and in our communities, Mr Speaker. That's what an orderly transition is all about. Now, the Treasury modelling concluded that the only thing worse than a disorderly transition to net zero is the policy position that those opposite will now adopt. The least responsible course of action would be to abandon net zero. This is what the Treasury said. This is what the Treasury said. Not pursuing net zero by 2050 risks lower economic growth, reduced investment, missed export and employment opportunities and higher electricity prices. The economic costs to Australia of not pursuing net zero will be significant and consequential. Australia is likely to face a higher cost of capital in international markets if it does not pursue net zero. This is the economic insanity that those opposite look likely to adopt, Mr Speaker. What they are proposing is absolutely insane in economic terms, and that's what the Treasury modelling document has made very clear. Now, Mr Speaker, the Shadow Treasurer used to support net zero. In fact, it was only last year he told this House there is bipartisanship when it comes to achieving the goal of net zero by 2050. But what has changed, Mr Speaker, and the reason he's now undermining his leader, as we read about in today's media, is because the economic vandalism, the right-wing extremism and the opportunism now infects every member of those opposite. To be fair to the opposition leader, They have all gone mad, Mr Speaker. They have all gone, as my predecessor would have said, they have all gone troppo. And the Australian people will pay a price.
The time has concluded. Call to the member for Fisher.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. Released today, Food Bank's Hunger Report reveals that nearly 200,000 Queensland families went an entire day without eating in the past year. Prime Minister, why are people going hungry under Labor when the Prime Minister promised, and I quote, "No one held back and no one left behind"?
Call to the Treasurer.
To me.
Oh, to the Prime Minister.
Thanks, Mr Speaker. I thank the member for his question. And as the Treasurer has just told the House, it's somewhat perplexing how in Tactics Committee, when someone came up with the question of let's ask about Food Bank, someone didn't go, well, actually, what might be a little bit uncomfortable is the fact that we ripped out $20 million per year out of funding for Food Bank.
Order.
Order.
So no. Members on my left are going to cease interjecting. There's far too much noise in the chamber. Prime Minister's been asked a question. He's going to be given the respect of being heard in silence.
So we now have, of course, you've got to listen to, sometimes it's the interjections where you get the unplugged views of those opposite. And we just had, this is about a report from Food Bank, from the Leader of the Opposition. So don't worry about the fact that we ripped money out of Food Bank, unlike this government that have provided additional money for services to make a difference. Just like in my previous answer, the member for Durack interjected that paying people in aged care to look after our oldest Australians better and childcare to look after the youngest Australians was unsustainable. That was the interjection, and she nods correctly there. That was the view. Just like yesterday, the member for Wright interjected across that funding public housing and looking after people in the housing sector and increasing rental assistance wasn't necessary under the former government because there wasn't an issue. We didn't need a housing minister under them.
The Prime Minister, on a point of the Prime Minister will pause, and I'll hear from the Leader of the Opposition.
A point of order on relevance, Mr Speaker. Sledging the opposition does not answer the question,
which
is about.
Yeah, I've been precisely trying to deal with points of order. That kind of language is completely unacceptable. When a broad question about no one held back, no one left behind, is part of the question. Of course, the Prime Minister is going to go pretty broad with his answer. These questions all week have been completely broad. So if you're asking a very broad question and then you want me to do relevance, but you want me to do relevance on a narrow question as well, the Prime Minister is being directly relevant, and if you ask a very broad question, you're going to get a very broad answer.
Thanks, Mr Speaker. Sometimes they're a bit beyond help from the hints, Mr Speaker. But what we hear from those opposite, when they actually get off the script that they stand up and read, when they actually interject across the chamber, is their real views. And their real views are contemptuous about the needs of the Australian people. That's right. Their real views are contemptuous. Whether it's about housing, whether it's about Food Bank, whether it's about paying aged care and childcare workers properly, they're contemptuous of the needs. And then they come in here and pretend, having voted against every single cost of living measure that we have put forward, every measure, they come in here and pretend to care. Well, the truth is that the Australian people are onto them. They're onto them. And that's why on May the 3rd, they voted for a government that would actually protect people and look after people's living standards, not just oppose every cost of living measure.
Time has concluded. Before I call the member for Bass, I'd like to welcome a parliamentary delegation from the Pacific family, Tuvalu, who have just joined us, led by the Speaker, the Honourable Sir Jacobo Italier, together with honourable members of the Tuvalu Parliament. And I'd like to acknowledge the High Commissioner. A very warm welcome to Parliament House, and thank you for my peace necklace. Hope it works. I give the call, order. Give the call to the honourable member for Bass.
Hear, hear.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Industry and Innovation. How is the Albanese Labor government's approach to delivering reliable energy helping to secure the future of the Australian manufacturing industry and jobs? What are the risks to manufacturing jobs?
Call to the order. Give the call to the Minister for Defence Industry, the Minister for Pacific Island Affairs and the Minister representing the Minister for Defence.
Thank you, Speaker, and I thank the member for her question. And I know that manufacturing is an incredibly important part of her local economy. And her community will be relieved to hear that the Tasmanian Government, Hydro Tasmania and Rio Tinto have come to a 12-month in-principle electricity agreement for Bell Bay Aluminium, a business that employs 550 staff and supports nearly 300 local businesses through its supply chain. And I hear the contempt from those opposite about an aluminium smelter getting assistance on an electricity contract. It demonstrates what they think about manufacturing in this country. Speaker, this is a short-term deal, but it provides breathing space for Rio and the state government to negotiate a long-term energy solution that ensures the smelter's viability. And this is important because Bell Bay is a cornerstone of the local Tasmanian economy. And the Albanese Labor government recognises the importance of smelters like Bell Bay, not only to the economy but to workers and families in the community itself. And that's why we're building a reliable energy system that will secure Australian competitiveness for decades. That's what a Future Made in Australia, the Capacity Investment Scheme and the CEFC all do, making sure we have cheap power and in turn a vibrant and world-class industrial sector that delivers good jobs. And again, I hear the interjections over there about our efforts to save manufacturing. Again, it demonstrates their contempt for manufacturing and the communities that rely on these well-paid, secure jobs. Again, their opposition to intervention demonstrates their unfitness for government. Mr Speaker, we're getting on with the job with supporting manufacturing in this country, while those on the other side demonstrate their contempt. And you had to see it in government as well, where they delivered 22 failed energy policies, where under their watch 24 of 28 ageing coal-fired power stations announced that they were closing within a decade when they were in power. You'd hope, Mr Speaker, that they'd learned from the past. The fact is, the only way to keep the lights on and reduce power bills is to accelerate the rollout of renewables, firmed with storage and backed by peaking gas. It's the cheapest approach as well. But all those opposite do is oppose and obstruct the rollout of renewables. The truth is, Speaker, the Liberals and Nationals aren't listening. They've got no new ideas. All they've got is contempt for manufacturers, continued opposition to our efforts to make power cheaper through rolling out renewables, continued opposition to our support for industries through tailored packages. In the end, all we have from over there is obstruction, contempt for jobs and contempt for the communities that rely on those good-paid, secure, highly skilled jobs.
Call to the member for Riverina.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. And my question, without notice, is to the Minister for Climate Change and Energy, and I refer to Labor's disastrous solar sharer program. Senior energy analyst Saul Kavanagh has slammed Labor's thought bubble as, quote, another poorly thought-through market intervention and warned, quote, the window of free electricity during the day will have to be offset by higher prices at other times to cover the fixed costs. Minister, by how much will other electricity users have to pay to subsidise this folly?
Call to the Minister for Climate Change and Energy.
Well, thanks very much indeed to the member for the question, Mr Speaker, and I think I do need to advise the honourable member, my friend, that he could have found a better expert than that. Because That individual, last I saw him, he was cutting videos against me in the seat of McMahon, Mr Speaker. That's how impartial he is to support an independent candidate in McMahon. So, you know, not sure he's the sort of person I'd be quoting. Maybe you could have quoted the Chief Executive of the Climate Energy Finance, who said, "This is excellent, Minister." Oh, look. It doesn't take much to trigger them, does it, Mr Speaker? You mention clean energy and away they go. I mean, yesterday we mentioned the Business Council of Australia and that set them off, Mr Speaker. You can't win. We had Brand Black, the Chief Executive of the Business Council of Australia, former Chief of Staff to Dominic Perrottet, the Liberal Premier of New South Wales, and they said, "Oh, he's not credible. He's not credible," they said. And now I quote the Chief Executive of Climate Energy Finance, who said, "This is excellent, Minister. This means many, many more consumers will benefit from free power at zero cost to the market and massively incentivise demand load shifting to the middle of the day." Or Stephanie Bashir from Nextra Advisory, a private sector advisory company, who said this policy will incentivise consumers to move their energy consumption to cheaper times of the day. That is good for their bills and good for the network. Crucially, it will force big energy to fix their systems and to innovate. Or, this will set them off, I apologise in advance, Mr Speaker, this will set them off. Solar Citizens CEO Heidi Douglas, who said this is a great start. It's smart, fair policy that helps renters and apartment residents tap into our rooftop solar advantage. But enough of organisations. Let's go to individuals, shall we, Mr Speaker? Feedback on the government's policy. Paul Mitchell, who we saw on social media. "This is a fantastic initiative by the government. It just makes sense. We have panels in a battery. Over a year we export 2/3 of the power that our roof generates. It's good that some of that excess power we export will now be used by others, particularly people in units who don't have panels yet." We agree. We agree with Paul Mitchell. This is a good thing, Mr Speaker. Or Tiffany Meek, who said, "This is a policy that genuinely helps poor and the disadvantaged. It's a policy for the Aussie battler, for stay-at-home parents, for the elderly and for people living with a disability." Shall we go on, Mr Speaker? Fran Pearce, who said, "This is an excellent option. One thing we have a lot of in Australia is the sun. It's great to share the excess energy, especially until battery storage improves." This is how Australians who understand the energy market, people actually participate in it, whether they be chief executives of groups or individuals who participate in the energy market, understand that this is actually a policy in the best interest of Australians. No wonder those opposition.
House comes to order. We'll hear from the honourable member for Hasluck.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Deputy Prime Minister. How is the Albanese government delivering key naval capabilities to keep Australians safe, and what barriers has the government had to overcome?
Call to the Deputy Prime Minister and Minister for Defence.
Well, thank the member for her question, acknowledge her service. In Sydney this week is the Indo-Pacific International Maritime Expo, IndoPac 25, and in conjunction with that is the Chief of the Royal Australian Navy's Sea Power Conference, at which there are 58 nations represented, including 35 Chiefs of Navy, everyone from the head of the Spanish Armada to the Chief of the Chilean Navy to Admiral Kaler, the Commander of the United States Pacific Fleet. And building our own sea power is a key part of the Albanese government's increasing Australia's defence capability. It's no coincidence that our most recent decisions have been focused on our Navy. The decision to pursue the Mencari-class vessel by Mitsubishi Heavy Industries as our future general-purpose frigate. $1.7 billion that we are investing in Ghost Shark, a unique long-range underwater autonomous capability produced by Anduril Australia, and the $12 billion that we've committed to the Henderson Defence Precinct, which will be the home of continuous naval shipbuilding in Western Australia and the place where we will maintain our future submarines. This is our government doing what we say, fulfilling our promises, and it is also part of a $70 billion increase in defence spending over the decade, spending which is also happening in the here and now, because in each of the last 2 financial years we have set records for the amount that has been spent on defence procurement, the vast bulk of which has been spent on Australian defence industry. Together, this represents the largest peacetime increase in Australia's defence spending in our history. And it could not stand in more stark contrast to what we see from those opposite, not just when they are in government, but in opposition as well, because when it comes to defence policy, they are lazy, they have gone on strike, their shadow minister has been described as a terrible retail politician, and these are not my views, these are the views of Peter Dutton, the former leader of the opposition, who until recently sat in that seat for 3 years and as such, on this topic, could rightly claim to be an expert witness. Well, while those opposite have gone AWOL when it comes to defence, our government is delivering for our nation to keep Australians safe.
Call to the honourable member for Cook.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. Yesterday on Sky News with Kieran Gilbert, the member for Solomon promised a 20% reduction to Australia power bills. The member said it's pretty clear there's going to be, from what the National Market Commission is saying, there's likely to be over the next decade a 20% decrease in power bills. When asked if he stood by this claim, he said, I quote, "Absolutely. Prime Minister, is a 20% decrease in power bills now your government's policy?"
Call to the Prime Minister.
I thank the member for Cook for his question, but I am somewhat sceptical about the premise there, because the premise is that a non-coalition member was on Sky News yesterday. Because what I've looked up, Mr Speaker,
Order.
is that one by one,
the member for Cook
one by
has
one,
asked his question.
every member of the National Party and of the Liberal Party are queuing up to be on Sky News to attack each other, to point out the issues that were said, and of course Kieran Gilbert is a very good interviewer, indeed. But I've got to say, I missed his interview yesterday. But I am aware of what the member for Cook has said about the issues when it comes.
Prime Minister is 1 minute in, and he is referring to the person who asked him the question. It's going to be hard to take a point of relevance when he's referring. Order, just let me finish, and then you will get a full say. Trust me. So, just in light of the standing orders, if you ask a question, the person answering the question is going to refer to you and your question. Okay.
Point of order is on relevance, Speaker. He was only asked about the member for Solomon's comments and the 20% decrease, nothing on the opposition.
Well, yes, you were. I don't know what the Prime Minister was going to say, because he was going to mention you. So, all right, the point of relevance has now been taken. There can be no more points of relevance. So the Prime Minister has the call, and I'm going to listen carefully to make sure he is being directly relevant.
There were a range of issues in the question. One was about Sky News, and I've said that, yeah, I'm surprised that there was any room for anyone but members of the coalition. I was asked. I was then asked, of course, about Kieran Gilbert, and I've praised Kieran Gilbert. He did a terrific job coming to APEC and to ASEAN just on the weekend.
Member for Forrest will leave the chamber under 94A. If I call you to stop interjecting, that's a really big clue to stop interjecting. Honestly. Okay. Just when the House comes to order, Prime Minister will return to the question.
Just on the weekend, because Kieran Gilbert travelled because he was actually interested in engaging with Australia's relationships in the world, including, of course, the issue of climate change was one of the focus in APEC of how the region transitions to a clean energy economy, and that was part of very much the debate. And I did an interview myself with Kieran Gilbert on the Sunday program, and I recommend it to the member for Cook. But I'm also been asked about policies when it comes to energy and power. And I am aware, given I was asked by the member for Cook, that when he was working at McKinsey, he produced an article titled "Carbon Light: How Australia Can Power Ahead in a Net Zero World." And I recommend it to his colleagues who are going through the Hunger Games. There goes your front bench. The Hunger Games over there, because what he said about prices was McKinsey analysis estimates these opportunities would add about $75 billion to the Australian economy each year through to 2035, as well as an additional 130,000 direct jobs over the period. So I recommend to the member for Cook, if I can give him a bit of advice, back in the former member for Cook's policy of net zero by 2050, circulate that article and then do a bit of a multiple choice question perhaps in the next party room meeting, although the next party room meeting might be focused on something.
The House comes to order. We'll hear from the honourable member for Bendigo.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Communications. How is the Albanese Labor government's world-leading social media laws helping to support parents keep kids safe online?
Call to the Minister for Communications and the Minister for Sport.
I thank the member for Bendigo for her question and for her genuine commitment to delivering future-facing policy for all of the young people that she represents in her beautiful part of the woods. Mr Speaker, protecting children in a digital age is a challenge that is confronting the world. Predatory algorithms, harmful content and toxic popularity meters are targeting children at a critical stage of their development. The Albanese government understands the need to be on the front foot of this rising threat with decisive and comprehensive action. And we are implementing world-leading reforms to reduce online harms experienced by young Australians, including delivering historic legislation to delay access to social media until the age of 16. Today, I confirmed for parents alongside the eSafety Commissioner the 9 platforms that must take action to remove underage accounts from 10 December. YouTube, Snapchat, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, Reddit, Kik, X and Threads. Mr Speaker, we know social media is doing social harm and we are calling time on it for kids. We want kids to have 3 more years to build resilience in the real world. We are not chasing perfection, we are chasing a meaningful difference. This law is world-leading and now countries across the world are following our lead. Denmark, Greece, Romania, France and our friends across the pond in New Zealand are all introducing a minimum age for social media. At Australia's United Nations event, the European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen said she was inspired by Australia's bold move to introduce the ban and has created a task force to see how that same law could apply to the EU. Because as the President said, parents, not algorithms, should be raising our children. Mr Speaker, the Republican Governor of Utah, who I met a few weeks ago, said he is cheering on Australia. Even Piers Morgan has backed our law, saying the Aussies have it right. Online platforms can target children with chilling control, and now we are mandating they use that same technology to give them 3 more years to build resilience. The Albanese government will never back down from this fight. We are on the side of parents, not platforms. There is a place for social media, but there is not a place for predatory algorithms, harmful content and toxic popularity meters that continue to cause our children harm.
The member for Kennedy was on his feet first, so I'll give the member for Kennedy a call, and perhaps in future we can discuss the arrangements so the Speaker is aware of who the question is going to. So the member for Kennedy has the call.
Agriculture Minister, over 25,000 square kilometres in northwest Queensland, Australia's cattle heartland, is now overrun by the prickly acacia weed tree. In contrast, buffalo grass now covers vast tracts of what were once barren wastelands. Buffalo's restoring riverbanks, deepening streams, many of which are now flowing again. Wouldn't you agree then with prominent Queensland Ag Force President Shane McCarthy, fifth-generation farmer, that only a government official cloistered in the Canberra kindergarten could ban buffalo grass? For heaven's sake, Minister, will you put a stop on this madness urgently? Otherwise, won't you preside over a 7% drop in Australia's fifth largest export industry, beef?
Call to the Minister for Agriculture, Fisheries and Forestry.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and I thank the member for Kennedy genuinely for his interest in this issue, and he has raised it with me personally, and I am well aware of it. And he also understands how critical the beef industry is to Australia. It is a very significant industry. Just a few weeks ago, we had a conversation about the buffalo grass, and on the matter of buffalo grass raised by the member, what I would say is that we recognise that buffalo grass is a valuable pasture for cattle in northern Australia, particularly in Queensland and the Northern Territory. The process that is currently underway is identifying new national weed priorities, and it's assessing buffalo grass in targeted areas where there's potential adverse environmental impact, such as national parks. Can I also say to the member, any recommended management action would not adversely affect buffalo grass in agricultural production areas where it's deliberately planted, not considered a weed, and continues to provide benefit to livestock. Any future decisions on weed priorities, including a decision on this particular one, would be made collaboratively by all state and territory governments, along with the Commonwealth, because, as the member would be aware, of course, state and territories are responsible for the management of pests and weed invasions in their local jurisdictions. The member would also understand that this industry is really significant for regional jobs across Australia, for our national economy as well, and we do understand the importance of the beef industry that the member referred to and the need to seize the opportunities that are there for the beef industry. As the member would know, I have been up to Beef Australia in the great state of Queensland, his home state, as has our Assistant Minister, and indeed in the last budget we provided $12 million for Beef 2027. Beef is, of course, as is quite rightly pointed out, a very significant export for Australia. Indeed, it's our most valuable agriculture export. And beef exports are currently up 62% since we came to government to $16 billion last financial year. $16 billion, so a very significant industry that we value and that we are working with to ensure that they reap the opportunities of the hard work that they have been putting into providing a great Australian product and exporting it across the globe.
Give the call to the member for Aston.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Health. How is the Albanese Labor government strengthening Medicare by investing in bulk billing after a decade of cuts and neglect? Is this investment reaching all corners of the country? And what has been the response to these changes?
Call to the Minister for Health and Ageing, the Minister for Disability and the National Disability Insurance Scheme.
Thank you, Speaker. Well, earlier this year, those opposite were telling any journalist who stood still for 5 seconds they were going to romp in at the last election in Aston. But they didn't reckon on the fighting spirit of this member, Mr Speaker. They didn't reckon on the energy that she brought to campaigning for our plan to build Australia and to strengthen Medicare, Mr Speaker, because she knows that is the right plan for her community in Melbourne's east. She knows that. The Maroondah Urgent Care Clinic in her electorate has already seen thousands and thousands of members of her community across 7 days a week, delivering high-quality urgent care, fully bulk billed, completely free of charge, Mr Speaker. And in just the first week of our record investment in bulk billing, Mr Speaker, the number of GP clinics in the electorate of Aston that are bulk billing all of their patients all of the time has tripled, Mr Speaker. It has tripled, and that number is just going to keep growing. And this investment, as the question indicates, has obviously been very broadly supported by patient groups. And I know that as a cancer survivor, this member is particularly focused on the response of a group like the Cancer Council, Mr Speaker, who has said this is a significant step forward for cancer care in Australia, saving patients hundreds of dollars and strengthening the involvement of general practice in cancer care and support. GP after GP that I've met has told us that how much they appreciate having the investment from us that allows them to bulk bill more of their patients. Even if some doctors, I do acknowledge, continue to argue, as they have for 40 years, that they'd prefer the investment to go to them without strings attached around patient outcomes. But then there's the coalition, Mr Speaker, and there's the coalition. The day before our record investment, which apparently they supported in the election campaign, had even started, the Shadow Minister already said it was unravelling. It was unravelling, Mr Speaker, which is about as funny as I remember John Howard saying that Medicare was one of the Hawke government's greatest failures, Mr Speaker, but not to be outdone in the comedy stakes. The Leader of the Nationals said this week, he said this, the best friend of Medicare at the moment is the National Party. The best friend of Medicare at the moment is the National Party. This guy, the guy who every time we mention healthcare, like Pavlov's dog, whips out the credit card, whips out the Amex every time we say Medicare. But I thought this, Mr Speaker, in a week where those opposite could barely come to a single position on a resolution that says the sun sets in the east, and the sun rises in the east and sets in the west, the one thing that always unites them, Mr Speaker, is how much they hate bog billing.
Call to the honourable member for Mallee.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. Does the Prime Minister agree with the member for Solomon there will be a 20% decrease in power bills over the next decade?
Order. Order. Members on my left. The member for Mallee's asked her question. Prime Minister has the call.
Page 8 of the CCA 2035 Targets Advice says this. Expert analysis by the Australian Energy Market Commission projects residential electricity prices will fall by 13%, about 5 cents per kilowatt hour, and average household energy costs will fall by about 20%, around $1,000 per year, over the next decade under a coordinated renewables rollout. That's the direct quote. That's the direct quote.
Members on my left.
That's the direct quote. So it's an entire misrepresentation to pretend that the member for Solomon, that is his view. He's quoting the advice which is there. Something that the member, I'm sure, knows.
No, I'm not. Member for Wannon, I said yesterday, I was the Prime Minister is directly answering the question. I'm not taking the point of order. I'm not taking it. Resume your seat. And I gave examples yesterday. If, I made it crystal clear yesterday, if a minister or the Prime Minister is being directly relevant with an answer, he was asked about a figure from the member for Mallee. I'm sure she's interested in the response. The Prime Minister is quoting about the figure and the report that he was asked about. He couldn't be more directly relevant. Prime Minister, in continuation.
I'm being directly relevant in pointing out that when the Tactics Committee, geniuses, chose to get the member for Cook, of all people, to ask the first time, and the member for Mallee to ask this question, they knew full well that the member for Solomon was quoting a report in the interview with Mr Gilbert.
Call to the member for Gellibrand.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is for the Minister for Housing, Homelessness and Cities. How is the Albanese Labor government delivering for first home buyers to help them to get into a home of their own? What other approaches is the government being asked to consider?
Call to the Minister for Housing, the Minister for Homelessness and the Minister for Cities.
Don't take responsibility.
Speaker, I thank my friend the member for Gellibrand for his question. Speaker, in part because of his strong advocacy 2,060 Australians in his electorate alone have purchased their first home with the support of our government. And Speaker, I know there will be many more to come after our government's historic expansion of first home ownership opportunities, which took effect on the 1st of October. Speaker, our country is in the midst of a housing crisis that's been building for 40 years. After a decade of neglect, our government has built the most ambitious housing agenda that a Commonwealth government has had since the post-war period. $43 billion, Speaker, to build more homes, to get renters a better deal and to get more Australians into home ownership. And we're delivering on those promises, Speaker. We promised we'd back in first-home buyers at the election, and not only did we deliver that promise, we did it 3 months earlier than we said we would. Now, the member asked me about alternatives, and there is an alternative sitting opposite, but I have to say on housing, I am starting to find it really difficult to know what it is that the Coalition stands for. Speaker, this is a party that says it supports home ownership. It does not have a single policy to support the young people of this country to get better housing opportunities. We've got a coalition here that opposes our government's expansion of home ownership opportunities to young Australians. Speaker, when did the Liberal Party of Australia give up on home ownership for Australians? It might be around the time they gave up on the idea of lower taxes, remembering that this so-called lower taxes party went to the election saying they were going to increase taxes on every single Australian. They've given up on budget discipline, Speaker. They gave us 9 budget deficits and $1 trillion of Liberal debt to manage. They've given up on environmental conservation, Speaker. They support government-funded nuclear power plants, not the cheap renewables that the market prefers. Speaker, I increasingly find myself looking on that side of the House and thinking, what on earth is it that connects this disarray together? Now, Speaker, they may be in total dysfunction. We are focused on delivery. Our government backs first home buyers. We have helped now 197,000 Australians get into a home of their own. And I want every single one of them to know that if it were up to the Coalition, you would still be renting. Speaker, I want the member for Wright to say to his 2,256 Australians in his electorate that he would prefer that they were still renting, not having had the home ownership opportunities they're getting under our government. Now, Speaker, those opposite might have given up on the great Australian dream, but our government hasn't. To Australia's first home buyers, we see that you are struggling. You face a big challenge, but we are on your side and we always will be.
The call to the member for Fowler.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. Prime Minister, I welcome your record Medicare spend, having long called for expanded bulk billing access. But with mental health the #1 reason people visit a GP in Fowler, doctors tell me that cutting Medicare items 2712 and 2713 removes the flexibility to provide longer, meaningful consultations for complex mental health cases. Can you guarantee that cutting items 2712 and 2713 won't deter GPs from offering the mental health care that families in Western Sydney depend on?
Call to the Minister for Health, the Minister for the National Disability Insurance Scheme.
Thank you, Speaker, and thank you to the Prime Minister for giving me the opportunity to respond to that. I haven't had a conversation with the member over the last several days, but I'm very pleased to report to the member and to the House that, as far as I can tell, every single general practice clinic in the member's electorate has indicated that as a result of our investment on Saturday, they will all be 100% bulk billing. Every single GP clinic in the electorate of Fowler.
Order. The Minister was talking about Medicare, but I'll listen to the member for Fowler on a point of order.
Thank you, Speaker. It was very specific, asking if the Minister of the Government will guarantee the cutting items 2712 and 2713. I understand that Medicare spend, I know that that's what the government has been talking about, that you spent millions, 8.5, but I'm asking specifically 2712 and 2713.
Yeah. The member for Solomon is warned. The Leader of the House.
Speaker, just to the point of order, there's a practice that's developed in points of order on relevance where people consistently quote only a small part of a longer question, and you have given ruling after ruling making clear that the relevance rule applies to any part of the question, and if people don't want there to be parts of the question that deal with anything other than their final few words. They should only ask the final few words.
Yeah, it places me in a difficult position when you ask a question about Medicare and you include things. That's okay. Resume your seat, Member Fowler. And then the minister is referring to that part. Now, he's 2 minutes 29 to go. He may be going to address that part of the question. I don't know. Right? Order. He may be focusing on that part, but we've only got one shot at taking a point of order on relevance. And I'll just remind members, probably it's best to keep that at the end, because once that's gone, it's gone. And it's very difficult now because I don't know what the minister's going to refer to in terms of mental health. He may do that, but I understand your point. You'd like an answer specifically regarding that end part of the question, but understanding rule is he's entitled to talk about the question that he was asked about. So anyway, I'll listen carefully and I'll make sure he is being directly relevant, and I'll make sure he continues to be directly relevant. The minister has the call.
Thank you, Speaker. I must say I'm a little surprised at the member's minimisation of the impact of the biggest ever investment in bulk billing in her electorate, given that, as far as I can tell, no electorate represented in this place has got the sort of result that I just reported has come from Fowler. And the relevance of that is that if you read the annual report from the College of GPs, increasingly they say the number one issue that GPs are consulted about 70% of GPs report this, I think. The number one issue they are consulted about is mental health. It is their bread and butter work. And the affordability of access to GPs is more important for mental health support than probably any other condition we can think of. So I'm surprised, frankly, that the member would minimise the impact of the record investment that we rolled out on Saturday for the access and affordability of mental health support in GPs. That was one of the overriding priorities when we designed the system that we rolled out on Saturday. So what I can tell the member for Fowler is that constituents in her electorate will have more affordable access to mental health support from their GP than in any other electorate represented in this chamber.
Call to the member for Gilmore.
My question is to the Minister for Infrastructure, Transport, Regional Development and Local Government. How is the Albanese Labor government helping regional communities stay...
The member for Gilmore, the member for Lindsay and the Minister... That's just, if everyone can just remain silent during the question, it'll help question time on both sides. So the Minister for Health and the member for Lindsay perhaps can have a conversation outside the chamber, but certainly not during the member for Gilmore's question, because I couldn't hear what she was saying. Let's just keep going, and the member for Gilmore will start a question again so I can hear it.
My question is to the Minister for Infrastructure, Transport, Regional Development and Local Government. How is the Albanese Labor government helping regional communities stay connected by keeping Rex Airlines flying? What has been the response?
Give the call to the Minister for Infrastructure, Transport, Regional Development and Local Government.
Can I thank the member for Gilmore for her question? And I particularly want to note when the Minister for Health was making his response and referred to the wonderful member for Aston and her fighting spirit, well, you couldn't get a match pair with the member for Gilmore. People had written her off, and look at her. She is absolutely amazing, and we're delighted to have her here all the time with us. For towns like Maruya in the seat of Gilmore, Coober Pedy in the seat of Grey and Winton in the National Party leader's seat of Maranoa, Rex is the only airline that connects them to the biggest city in their region. 45 towns in Australia that rely on Rex to get them where you need to go. Our government has been crystal clear from the start. We know that Rex is essential. When Rex hit financial turbulence, we stepped in to keep it flying. This government made a commitment that we would support Rex and the regional towns that the airline rely on the airline. I'm pleased that we've made significant headway on this commitment, with administrators securing a way forward with AirT, subject to the upcoming creditors meeting next week. AirT, who have significant experience in maintaining aircraft, such as the Saabs that connect our regional communities, and Rex's essential routes served. The government will be, I announced yesterday, supporting AirT in restructuring Rex's existing debts. In exchange for this support, AirT have agreed to a range of commitments that will preserve regional connectivity, including returning more aircraft and increasing the frequency of those profitable flights across the REX networks. The government will be retaining security over the aircraft and the simulator, and that will ensure that the fleet of Saabs cannot be sold without this government's permission, making sure that guarantee is there. But what we've also done, and we announced yesterday, is that we are also establishing a new $5 million program for local government-owned regional and remote airports that supported REX throughout voluntary administration. We know that many of them have had to forego money that they would have been able to spend on other things because of that administration. So this government is stepping in, supporting those local councils and making sure that they are able to continue those incredibly important regional airports going. This government has been determined to support REX from the start, and I'd have to say some of the comments at the time from those opposite, particularly, as I'd have to say, when we were told that we would frankly, it was a bridge too far what we were doing. I think the Shadow Minister said that we were going to crowd out competition from smaller regional airlines and wanting us to break REX and REX's routes up. This has been an important process for the government to systematically, seriously work through what has been a difficult problem, and I'm pleased that we now have a pathway forward for regional aviation in this country.
Brought to the Prime Minister.
Thanks, Mr Speaker. Can I firstly congratulate the Minister on this? Is really an outstanding achievement. Also acknowledge the backing up of what the government did by the member for Riverina during that period as well. This is an outstanding result, and people in regional communities, many of them, ran the risk of being without aviation services, which is about the economy but also about access to health services and education, and I acknowledge that. And on that note, Mr Speaker, I ask that further questions be placed on the notice paper.
On indulgence, also the Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I want to give a shout out to the wonderful pilots and crew of REX Airlines around the country. Say what an outstanding job they do, as do many other smaller regional airlines, many of whom, as the Shadow Minister correctly said during this debate, were prepared to step up and step in and do what they do better than anyone else in the world.
Pursuant to the National Anti-Corruption Commission Act 2000.